How do you see this playing out? Are we set for a showdown?
Yes, no question. Keep in mind, as soon as the Senate changes anything that the House has sent them, then it means it has to go back to the House. The Senate is under no way, no circumstances, ever going to accept what the House sent without any changes. So this is just round 2 of at least 3. I think, Haslinda, that this July 4th date is completely artificial. The important date is this. Buried in this bill is the increase in the debt ceiling. Scott Bessent has said that the Treasury runs out of money, I think, effectively sometimes in mid-August. That's the real date here. That's the hard deadline. July 4th is a PR date. It's the 250th anniversary of the founding of our nation. So 249th, maybe. So I get my math wrong. So the July 4th date is there for press purposes. It's that X date for Treasury that is the real deadline here.
Realistically, how will this play out?
The Senate will change it. And then the House will have to take the changes that the Senate has taken. They will pass something. These, after all, are the Trump tax cuts. They are his signature legislative achievement from his first term and from the second term. This would be like Barack Obama defending Obamacare. Trump will get his tax cuts extended. What it looks like, what goes along for the ride as part of the one big, beautiful bill remains to be seen.
The question is, at what cost? We know that Moody's downgrade was based on that fiscal concerns. I mean, how do you see the U.S. economy performing from here amidst the passing of that big and beautiful bill?
I think the Trump team is probably not watching the equity markets anymore. Keep in mind, he's not running for re-election, so sort of the popular culture of following the stock market won't affect his actions. The bond markets, however, are a different story. If they have continued soft auctions, they had a soft auction on a 3-year a couple weeks back. I think that led directly to the first 90-day pause. They had a rough 20-year auction a week before last one. I think we saw 105 basis points up on the 20-year. Those are the types of things that get the Treasury's attention. And when it gets Scott Bessent's attention, it's going to get President's attention.
So big and beautiful on the one hand, we have also the expected talks between Xi Jinping and Trump later this week.
Yeah.
Do you think it will happen?
I'd be curious to see if they do happen. As you and I were talking off air, I think there's a fundamental disconnect here. Trump wants to talk at the very highest levels. That's not always how the Chinese want to do business, and I'd be curious to see if they're able to make any headway. Trump doesn't want to go through the back channels. He doesn't want to go through the ordinary course of business. That's never been his style as a leader, be it in business or in his first term in office. He wants to talk to the principal. He wants to talk to President Xi himself. So we'll be curious to see if the conversations that the White House has telegraphed actually do take place.
I just want to put it out there. We've not heard from the Chinese about this talk coming through. I mean, what are the chances that the two sides can find a common ground?
Yeah, it's an ancient Chinese saying that it takes two to tango, or is that an American sign?
Can they de-risk without decoupling?
They're going to have to, at some point, they're going to have to find that middle ground. They're going to have to find a way to speak to each other that satisfies both sides. I do not see them being able to pull off a deal the old-fashioned way, which is going through the back channels. And I think it'd be very difficult to do a deal going the Trump way, which is only Xi to Trump, man to man. So they're going to have to try and find a way to sort of split the difference.
How much pain is the U.S. willing to go through to get those concessions from China? We've constantly talked about how China is in for the long haul. It is prepared. It's been preparing for the last 7 years.
I think that goes back to the issue about the equities versus the bond markets. I think if the pain is in the equity markets, the answer is quite some time. That Trump is ready for that. He's tried to prepare people back home for that, to take a hit maybe to what their 401ks, their IRAs might look like. The bond market's an entirely different story. You could see very quick change in American policy if you see something bad happen on an auction for a Treasury.
There's been a lot of questions on whether or not we're going to see stagflation in the U.S. economy. Do you see that? I mean, I had a conversation with Jamie Dimon who says that we should actually prepare for that.
Well, I mean, that's... Look, Jamie Dimon struggles with his credibility in Washington, D.C. because he's been for all of the spending that got us here in the first place. So it's sort of hard then to sort of change gears and say, oh, now it's time for fiscal austerity. But Jamie Dimon is also the man that Trump says he listens to. He listens to, yes, he does. There's no question. I want to diminish that in any fashion. Trump listens to a lot of people. There's no question. Trump also watches the markets. He also watches the inflation numbers. The inflation numbers we got this past week or week before last, whose track I've been traveling, were actually a lot more benign than people realized. We thought that maybe the tariffs would have hit consumer prices by now. They haven't. Will they spike up next month? Maybe, but if you see a couple more soft months on the inflation numbers, it will just embolden Trump to continue what he's doing.
And do you think the U.S. is comfortable with the dollar where it is right now? We have the likes of Morgan Stanley saying the dollar will weaken 9% by mid-2026.
Look at it this way. Donald Trump has been a soft dollar guy his entire life. I've had these conversations in the Oval Office with the president dozens of times. I was a king dollar guy. So was Larry Kudlow. We lost those arguments. Donald Trump does believe in a softer dollar for the purposes of boosting American manufacturing and exports overseas and so forth. So you can expect the White House to continue to talk down the dollar just about any chance it gets.
I want to talk about DOGE and what it's been wanting to do. It's something you yourself embarked on when you were with the Trump administration the first time round. How do you think DOGE has done in managing those costs, in bringing in costs down?
Yeah, I think it's done a lousy job in actually bringing down the costs, but it always was going to do that. I've said from the very beginning that at the end of the day, and we're now at the end of the day for Elon Musk, he will find it easier to get to Mars than it is to fix the federal government. And that's because he doesn't have the tools. DOGE didn't have the tools. The executive branch doesn't have the tools to do what they wanted to do, which is actually save money. Only Congress has that tool. But it's been a roaring success at another level, which is at the PR level. It's now cool. It's now popular to talk about government waste, government efficiencies in Washington, D.C. That was one thing I was never able to do when I ran the Office of Management Budget. Nobody cared about it 8 years ago. Now they do care, and that's the first step to actually fixing things. So did Elon Musk actually save any money? No. But did he set the stage for us to possibly actually start to fix things? Yes, he did, and that has to be seen as a success.
But where do efforts go from here with Elon Musk now pulling back from his responsibilities at DOGE?
Well, I mean, DOGE will continue. Keep in mind, DOGE is under the Office of Management Budget now, as it has been in the first place. I think that Elon will continue to be one of those voices. You mentioned Jamie Dimon before. Elon will continue to be one of those voices that Donald Trump certainly listens to. He just won't be in the building every single day. And keep in mind, geography has a lot to do with your influence in Washington, D.C. Proximity to the president counts, and Elon won't be nearly as close physically as he was before.
Mick, we've been talking about negotiations within the U.S. and China. We know that when it comes to Elon Musk, he has huge businesses, presence, footprint in China with Tesla.
Yeah.
Is that a liability for the U.S. in its negotiations with China?
Certainly leverage for the Chinese. I can't tell you during the first term, I mean, it was a daily sort of march of corporate CEOs from Wall Street into the Oval Office trying to convince Donald Trump to go softer on China because that's where they were making a good deal of money. That will simply continue. Is it new? No. Is it sort of a higher profile because it's Elon Musk? Yes, it is. But there have been interconnections between these economies for decades now, and you're going to continue to see that play out during these tariff discussions.
You've been involved in these discussions. You have connections, networks. You know, back in 2019, we had Henry Kissinger talk about how the U.S. and China were on the foothills of a Cold War, and increasingly we're seeing signs of that, you know, inching ever closer to that.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, if we get there, we know how to win it. It's always been one of my questions. We beat the Soviet Union in a Cold War. You don't do it by doing business with them. You do it by effectively beating them economically. Can you do that to China? I think it may be too late to use that same playbook. But one of the questions I think that many conservatives in my country, not necessarily within the Trump administration, but conservatives are asking is, why are we treating China differently than we treated in the Soviet Union? It's a communist nation. They clearly have sort of their sights set on a bigger place in the world stage, much as the Russians did. Why are we treating them differently? Certainly the outcome has been different, but that's all part of the mix. It's not 1978 anymore in my country. It's not 1978 anyway, but it is certainly part of the debate back home.
How can the two coexist?
I think they can. I absolutely think they can. They have to work through this right now. Sooner or later, look, China has to stop. China has to become a leading nation of the world. They can't steal people's intellectual property. They can't force you into bad deals in order to do business in your country. They can't hide information when they deal with pandemics like they did with COVID-19. First-tier nations of the world don't do that. And if China is going to become a first-tier nation, they need to step up their game. Until that point, I think you'll see America deal with China differently than they do with everybody else around the world.